Welcome everyone to Chroma AMA number 10. And today's guest is none other than longtime friend of the server, team member, and infamous, I should say,
Oh Lord.
quantitative trader, Beniduboss. So welcome, Beni. Thank you very much for coming with us. Thank you very much for agreeing to answer all of our very annoying discretionary questions.
Man, I'm happy to be here. You know, we spoke about doing this for a while, and I'm happy to finally do it. I went and looked at the questions, and there were some actually proper questions, and then I realized like people are expecting me to be somebody I'm not, and I'm gonna have to rectify this quite harshly.
I think there are a lot of quant-based questions, so maybe that might be a good place to start. I mean, we said that the topics we would cover today, we'd cover maybe some kind of quantitative trading, ARB stuff. I'm also curious to know about your experience working with a crypto hedge fund, because I think that's a rather unique experience in the space. And then maybe something we can try and get the conversation around to your trading style, because I know you say things like, oh, I trade market inefficiencies. Now that makes sense in some ways, but I guess trying to
Yeah,
angle for specifics it might be something we do towards the end of the conversation. So I think we'll start at the start. That seems like a sensible place to do it. So Jonesy's question here, first of all, it's a good one. It's a nice icebreaker. How did you first get into crypto/trading?
man, this is such a good question because like in reality it's difficult to say because they're two very different dates. But I'll give some background info so everybody understand, because people are gonna call me a liar if I tell them I started when I was like very very young. But there is a reason for it. So essentially, I went to public school until I was around 11, 12 years old, and then I went to private school because there was this like weird math competition in my country, and I did pretty well. And if you did decent enough, you'd get into the local private school over there. And the private school used to go skiing during the winter months on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons. And I was born with a blood disorder that basically means I can't really do very physical stuff or where I have a risk of getting hurt. So I was kind of locked inside, and I had basically nothing to do. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not getting pocket money. My friends are getting pocket money. So I'm going to do what every 13-year-old does, and I'm going to Google, how do I make money online? And I went through like a whole list, and nothing was really interesting to me. And then I started looking into like what the economy was, and sort of reading like very very basic stuff about that. And I think one day, kind of like on random, I fell upon Bitcoin, the old Bitcoin forum. And I went there, and I specifically remember making an account and asking like, so what is all this thing about? Like, I'm 13 years old, blah blah. I don't understand what all of this is. And funnily enough, I know who replied to that message, and I reached out to them on Twitter, and we're now decent friends. And he remembered me 10 years later almost. And basically, we just like answered all my questions. Like, okay, so what is Bitcoin? How does it work? Why can you not? I also remember saying like, why can you not return transactions? What if like you're not happy with the service and blah blah? And he sort of explained the whole meta around why it was necessary and why it worked that way. And I think I just got so interested in something that I thought was so novel, and just not even I never thought I would make money. When I started crypto, it was not about making money. It was just about like, this is so cool. Like, I can have like money that's not real in the real world, but that it can be explained with maths and some basic, or should I say not so basic, computer language, and it just works, and nobody has to supervise it. And it was just, yeah, it grew on me, and I spent a lot of time just reading and talking to people without even owning coins. But if we need a date, I started when I was 13. And then later down the line, when I got into trading, I was late 15 years old, early 16 years old, I think. So it was in late 2016 when I actually started trading, because I had found probably the first inefficiency. That was stable coins that were unpegged and not very liquid. So I took advantage of it just because it made sense to me. So I guess that's kind of the whole story. Is like I started pretty young because I was just interested in the idea and never thought I would ever make any money with it. And then got lucky, made some money, and looked into trading later down the line. That's kind of the story.
That's super interesting. Yeah, so you got a really young start, almost by necessity, as you say. You were you wanted to get some pocket money. I think it's interesting
Yeah,
you say that because a lot of people come into crypto with that same mindset, but it's typically maybe later in life. In their 20s or 30s, they want the freedom the life affords, or maybe they want the financial freedom that comes with being a crypto trader. But you already
yeah.
had that in your head when you were like
But
13 or
But
14.
to be honest, like it was never about that, because like back then on Bitcoin forum, there would people who would like give you task. They would like put task that they needed somebody to do, and if you did that, then they would just pay you in Bitcoin, right? And I remember doing a couple of those for like, I think it was like 0.5 Bitcoins at the time, which was like, no, it was less. It was 0.01 Bitcoin, which was like, I don't know, honestly, probably a buck or two, something like that. And I have no idea where those bitcoins went, but I know I got paid, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Did you stock up on any Bitcoin? Do you still own any Bitcoin from like way back in the day?
Yeah, I have on a well, yes. So I do technically. I own some dust from an old wallet where purchase date is 2014. But I also own a lot of coins that I have not access to and that are worth a lot of money. I own probably like, I own mid seven figures in Doge that I don't have the private key to, because I bought it for like freaking $50 in 2016 or 2015, when it was worth like actually nothing, and it went in like the biggest bull run craze of last bull market, and I just no idea where the coins are. I have the paper wallet, but I don't have any ways to access it. So I
That's
just,
crazy. I
yeah.
think you told me that story before. And I mean, is there any future hope of getting access to that wallet?
Well, I'm just gonna hope that the Russian hackers get really good and manage to find something in the paper wallet itself. Otherwise, there is no way. I kept the computer though, just in case, and I have the hard drive, but I have no hopes, like zero hope. But
Well,
you'll realize
fingers
that,
crossed.
like, yeah, like you'll realize that that story happened to me so many times, whether it be by my own mistake, by somebody else's mistake. But getting locked away from my own my own money is my story in crypto for many years.
Well, can you tell us about that then? Because I know you have, well, you're pretty outspoken about self-custody and the dangers that come with that. So, I mean, do you have any other examples of
Yeah.
times
So
that have failed you?
absolutely. So well, what saved me? Well, I guess I've got hurt many times. The first time I got really badly hurt was because I lost the private key to my wallets, and the way it happened was really funny. So I had it in a notebook, in an old school notebook from when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and half of it was used for for past school work. And I just wrote everything down there, thinking nobody was ever gonna look into it. And I was right, nobody looked into it. But my mom thought like I'm never gonna look into it either, so she threw it in the bin. And that was my first expensive mistake of understanding what how valuable those private keys are. But keep in mind, like at the time, it was probably like $200 that I had in the wallet. But to me, it was life-changing money.
A lot of money, yeah, of
Yeah, man, I
course.
was gonna build a house with that money one day. So like, it was heartbreaking. So a few years went down, and I started trading 2016. So I did okay. I think I had a bunch of beginner's luck, because at the beginning I had one trade, and there was only one thing I was doing, which was arbing stablecoins. In 2016, there were so many different stablecoins that were, especially like fake DAIs, where they would just have like, they would just copy DAI, and they would just like launch their own stablecoins. And it had no liquidity. People at the time were not really looking into DeFi yet, so like you could really take advantage of it pretty big. Like you could make almost 2-3% a day just arbing those all day long, and it was really fun because back then, at least when I started, fees on Ethereum were really low. And then at some point, like 6 months after, for the same transactions, I was paying like $800 in fees just because like the network was so congested during DeFi summer. So I
Yeah.
did that for quite some time, and I remember finding something on Cryptopia because they had LTC markets on Cryptopia. So like they would have like, let's say, Bitcoin against LTC or whatever. They had a bunch of markets against LTC, and they were often quoting pretty wrong, especially on things that have really bad liquidity. So I just put a bunch of my money there, thinking like, oh, this is basically free money. Like I can just make 5% every time there is some volatility because there was really no market maker on the market at the time. And I was like, I can make good money, and I did. It was a successful trade for a long time, but that's when I understood that counterparty risk also happened on CEXs because they went down after a hack, and they took, I think I had 80 ETH on it, or a bit less, maybe 60 ETH, and locked out. They took all my money, and back then that was like probably 80% of the money I had in crypto, and the money I had in crypto basically meant my net worth because I had $0 anywhere else. So it was a pretty big blow, especially because like I did nothing that year. Like I just stayed in front of my computer and tried to get better at trading. And I tried a bunch of different things, but I only kept the one trade that worked for me, right? And since it got arb pretty heavily by the end of DeFi summer, there was basically no trade anymore, and I had to look into other things. But that was one of the painful mistakes I did, was Cryptopia and losing, I think, 60 ETH on that website. That was pretty bad. That I got locked out. I think it's still in discussions now. Lawyers are kind of working on it, but there is essentially no hope in getting that money back. And it happened like 5-6 years ago now. So like, just to put into consideration how long it can take with FTX, everybody's saying like, oh, in 2 years we're all gonna get our money. Like it takes it they can drag it as long as they want, and it's in their sort of it's better for them to drag it on because they keep getting fees on a weekly basis. So it's yeah, it's a bit of a scammy business, but it is what it is. So I lost money through to in conclusion, I essentially lost money because I didn't keep my seed phrase, then because I had money on a shady exchange, and then I lost again this year. Well, I can say it. I don't really care. I lost a bit more than 350,000 euros on an OTC deal, where I brought crypto to a lawyer's office, and the counterparty, so another person that was interested in crypto, brought cash, but not cash. Well, he made a bank transfer to the lawyer. So we signed the paperwork with the lawyer, blah blah blah. He was gonna send me the money. The guy was gonna I was gonna send the crypto so that they would get it. And in the meantime, the client got the crypto, but I never got the money because the lawyer just left the country with the transaction. So I lost everything, and it was really difficult because it's what I had worked on. Basically, I had lost everything on Cryptopia, tried to rebuild, did pretty good during the bull market, and had up to basically high six figs, and then I lost a huge significant chunk of what I had made, and then I had to pay taxes on top, and it was a big pain. It was a dark time. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep doing crypto, and if I had to go find a job. I had dropped out of college to do this full time, and really not a fun experience. And it just goes to show, like, even when not even a thought came into my mind that this money could be seized, or that the guy could run away with it, because I went to somebody who was somewhat notorious in his field, at least where I'm from. I had never heard anything bad about him. But yeah, it just goes to show that, like, even when you think there is no chances, they very very significantly are. And it was an expensive mistake. I've learned from my mistake, and now I take security extremely, probably even a bit paranoid now. But it's worked out, and I think many people are starting to listen to me after what FTX and what happened with that, and taking security a lot more seriously. And I'm glad, because I think that's honestly very important.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I'm actually, you know, that I'm aware of that story, and I was around when it was kind of happening. That was just before you had been
Yeah,
in Chroma for a while as a member, and that was just before you got involved as a team member. So I remember,
yeah,
yeah, I remember hearing that story in full. But it does, yeah, I was gonna say maybe the upside of that is now, of all the people I know in the space, you're probably the most security conscientious, and I think you probably go above and beyond, you know, for good reason, in terms of securing your crypto, your cold wallets, etc. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's the same as a lot of these things in crypto. It's an expensive lesson, you know, but hopefully you learn something from it and you grow and you come out the other side stronger, you know. And I don't want to turn like you losing money into, you know, an
no, no,
aphorism
no.
or some kind of meaningless motivational quote. But you know, I think those experiences do toughen you, and you know, you seem to be thriving, you know, today. So hopefully that is the case with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's also like, I was a bit naive, you know. I was 19. Well, I was, when I started, 13. Then first time I lost a lot of money, I was 16. Now I when I lost 300K, I was 20. So like, I was also a bit naive on how the world works, and I thought people were good, and you know what I mean, like, not really understanding that, like, that is so much money, man. Like,
Yeah.
for it doesn't seem a lot when you're working on your computer all day and the numbers magically go up or down. And but man, like, $300,000 is so much money for 99.999% of the population, and it will drive them to do things that you're not prepared for. And it was an expensive lesson, and I still regret it to this day. Honestly, it did not do good for my mental health, because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, it's not great. And fool me three times, then yeah, Benny, like, you need to get your shit together. Like, I took it pretty harshly, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't take it too harshly, as you say. I mean, it was possibly a bit of naivety on your behalf, but also you were just, you know, you were I guess taking these guys at face value and assuming that they were going to do their fucking jobs,
Yeah.
and when they didn't, you paid the price. But yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, like, it is an expensive lesson, but ultimately, I think, you know, you might agree with me that you're in a decent place now. So hopefully it all works out in the end. And also, you're like, what you said this thing happened to you when you were 16, and another thing happened to you when you were 20. I think you're 22, right?
Yeah, I just turned 22 last month. Yeah.
That's so crazy to me. Like, the way you speak, it's like you're looking back on a lifetime of experience, you know, from your retirement home or something like that. But you're like over a decade younger than me, and you know, I very much look up. Yeah, people are like, "What, 22?" And I do very much look up to you. I'm constantly asking you questions because I assume that you know the answer, and I assume that you, as you are, much smarter than me. But I also forget that I was a teenager when you were still in nappies. So that's a funny realization to have. I think this space kind of does that. You probably know this as much as I do, but I think if you come into this space with like an ego and you say, "Oh well, I can't learn from people who are 10 years, 12 years younger than me," I think that's going to damage your ability to take alpha from the people that you surround yourself with, and your ability to grow as a trader and as a human being. Like, we have guys like MVA and Tyler in the server. They are literal teenagers, and you know, very
Yeah.
often I'll ask them questions, or I'll defer to them because they know more than I do, even though I am. You know, I'm rapidly approaching my mid-30s. You know, I say with a sweat rolling down the side of my face. But I mean, that's the attitude you have to have, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think you pointed out something so interesting and so important, at least for me. Like, I think the reason why many people don't make it in crypto, or at least aren't profitable or running into sort of roadblocks is because their egos sort of block them from reaching whatever they would be able to reach, right? Like honestly, I can't tell you how many times like I've had like 16-year-old guys in my DMs explaining why I was like delta hedging something wrong. Like the dude was not even done with high school and he was explaining some very complicated maths to me, and I was just like, bro, what is going on? Like in what world is this happening? And the other way too, right? Like many times I was talking with people and I was like, man, I'm literally so stupid. Like I know nothing. The guy is 40 years old. He's been in marketing since he's 20. He started off like low level broker and ended up having like a massive firm, and the guy knows like literally everything there is to know about markets in depth. And I'm just here like, man, I thought I was decent before talking to this man, and just realized like, dude, I'm actually so far from being anything 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 that would drive somebody like him to think, oh wow, like this guy has like actual abilities. Like we often forget, because in crypto everybody's very young, or the space is so young, it's barely 10, like barely 15 years old, that like it's people often forget that like, yeah, dude, before getting to crypto, some people like were in markets like 30 years ago, and they were killing it in the most competitive market in the world, and then they came to crypto. And like I feel like that's so interesting, and part of why my love-hate relationship with Twitter exists is because I get to speak with people like that, you know, people that have like wrote some like books that were instrumental to quote unquote my success, if I can call it that way. And I get to speak with them on a daily basis, and shoot the shit with them, and that they don't think they're too good to be speaking with me or with anybody else realistically. And I think that's so big. It's one of the things I like most about this industry, is the ability to not network but speak with people who are so much better than you, and their availability to reply and use some of their time to help you out. I think that's just so big, and partly why I wanted to come in Chroma, and in my own way, sort of like not saying I'm doing huge work, but give back what I can, and what they have given me.
And also learn to draw lines on charts, because I mean that's the skill that we offer that we can teach you, right?
Yeah, I still need work, quite frankly, but I'm getting there
You
for it.
still need the trading view basics course. I think that's what we're gonna get you
Yeah,
in, the
yeah, I
basics
still
of
remember
supply
the
and
day
demand.
yeah, I still remember the day I told you that I didn't have I had a free account on TradingView, and like you didn't believe me for like 20 minutes.
I think I've seen you share 2 TradingView charts in like the nearly year that I've known you. So, yeah, no, unsurprising, unsurprising. If I could just go back a step there, you spoke about the alpha that comes with listening to people and being able to engage with them. Can you name someone or anyone in the space who stands out as having had a big influence on your trading? Or someone that you speak to even today, someone who continues to have an influence on your trading.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the number of, if I had to give one account on Twitter, right? And I was like, you have to, you can only follow one person. It would have to be RJ, so Robot James on Twitter. He was he's an Australian quant who basically like absolutely demolished markets before crypto, got in crypto, destroyed crypto, and got so tired of being so good. He would hate me for me to say this, by the way, but um, it he basically like, yeah, just destroyed the crypto markets, and then was like, I'm bored, I'm gonna teach my 11-year-old son to take advantage of bookies on Mexican soccer games, of like second division Mexican soccer games. And his son has been killing it trading that. Like it's crazy. He's so good, and his way of explaining very conceptual stuff, and in-depth sort of concepts very easily with charts that are drawn by like an 8-year-old is just so great, and everybody can understand what he's talking about. And if you don't, you can go to his blog and just find an article that would explain sort of what he's doing. And he's published so much stuff for free, and it's just, yeah, he's such a great guy. Even as a person, he's very funny, very good guy. And yeah, he's been on top of his game for like 30 years. Like, it's crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just posted his Twitter link in voice chat. I think I follow him as well. Yeah, good account for sure. Definitely a lot of the things that he speaks about go over my head, but that's pretty normal. That's pretty standard for for
Yeah,
alpha that
and
I see on Twitter.
like, it's like and that's not a bad thing, right? Like, I didn't start having all of that knowledge either. Like, literally when I started it, when people spoke about like an order book, I had no idea what the fuck they were talking about, right? Like, we all start somewhere. There's no shame in being like, I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Like, embrace that. Like, I'm always on Discord. Just tag me and be like, yo, like, what is he talking about here? Like, what does any of this means? Like, he's speaking a different language to mine, which is how I feel a lot of times when I hear Follis and MVA and all of them talk. Like, they're using lingo that I don't understand, and that's okay. You We all start somewhere, right? And there is no shame in realizing that you don't understand something, but there is shame in not understanding it and wanting to not wanting to deep further. Because I think, very, very, very honestly, um, I think crypto and trading overall is simply a game of information. You're Everybody should be, now it's not the case all the time, I'm aware of that, but it should be that we're all on the same, we all have access to the same information about the market, right? And essentially the one that's going to make the most money is the one that interprets the data better. That can be by drawing lines, by fucking looking at tea leaves. I don't care. I am one of those guys that when people debate like, does PA work? Is being a quant better? Like, does not matter to me. I do not care. Like, you can be getting it from the moon for all I care. As long as you make money and you're successful and you enjoy what you're doing, that's great, man. Like, I have no shame, not shaming anybody. I'm not saying what you're doing doesn't work. Like, as soon as you've been doing it for enough time that it's likely you're not just very lucky, or you're hitting variance and you're actually successful. Good for you. That's
Uh,
honestly how I see things.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I completely agree with that sentiment. I find the conversation of, does technical analysis work? Does it not work? From the likes of Algod, I just find it so tiresome. I couldn't give less of a shit. Like, it's such an uninteresting conversation to me. Because the bottom line is, if you're making money, it doesn't fucking matter how you're doing it. If you draw lines on a chart and you psyops yourself into believing that they work, who the fuck cares if who the fuck cares if it's based in something or not? Like, if you can manage to consistently draw money from the market over time, then that's enough for me. If you do those basic retail triangle breakout patterns and support and resistance, and you trade like someone who's read the very basics of trading, and it works for you and you're profitable over time, who the fuck am I to say that oh, that's not a proper trading style? This guy needs to be doing the ICT SMC liquidity concepts thing, or else he's not a real trader. Like, fuck that. I will never ever, you'll never catch me putting someone down because of their trading style, as long as they're profitable. At the end of the day, profits speak
Yeah.
louder than anything else. So I completely agree with you on that one, Benny. And I'll also echo that sentiment that for anyone wanting to learn from Benny, I do tag him several times a day in the chat. So feel free to do so, because he's always a good one to answer any annoying questions that I have. So I'm going to
Yeah.
rewind the conversation a step or two, and talk maybe a bit about your trading style, because you touched on it briefly. You said, back when you first started, you were doing a lot of arbing. So I want to know, first of all, I want to know what exactly that entails, because I have an idea in my head of what arbing is. I'm sure it's very different from what it actually is. And I'm sure there are people in the chat who have no fucking idea what it is. And then I'd also like to speak about, what your trading style looks like today, how it's evolved, and maybe, are you still doing arbing, or is that not possible anymore? How have you developed your trading style in the last few years, and what does it look like now?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people speak about like arbitrage and what that means, and I feel like a lot of people are just essentially sort of putting it on a pedestal and acting like you're turning wine into gold or some shit. Like it's really not that deep. Essentially, when I started, it was the easiest ARB you could make. You could do single two-legged ARBs, which means that essentially you had Uniswap that was selling some stablecoin you've never heard of. Let's call it ABC. That was selling ABC at 95 cents, and then you could go on Maker, and Maker was selling ABC for $1.02. So all I would do all day, literally, is buy as much as I can without moving the price of Uni at 95 cents, and then moving it to Maker and selling it at 1.2. And basically, the differences were big enough, large enough throughout the day that like I was able to essentially make decent money doing that the entire day. Now, important to note that there is no such a thing in the market as free money. All right. When you see ARBs like that, at the time I didn't really understand it, and I just thought it was literally free money. But it's not. There is a reason why, on one side, for example, like there's a reason why something unpegs or things like that, and usually it's because people don't quite understand the risk involved in holding such tokens. Like I was arbing stablecoins that were made the day prior by probably a 15-year-old dude in his basement. Like they had literally no liquidity, no nothing. Like it's basically I was basically doing some gambling with some little bit of edge, and not taking into consideration the fact that I could totally get rugged within like half a minute of me holding it. So always whenever you see things like that, like the first thing that should come to mind is understanding why there is a discrepancy and why you think you can make money. We can get into like more complex things such as like collecting risk premia and what that means, and basically taking on risk and getting paid for it because that's a trade and that exists, or also simply finding arbitrage opportunities, right? But basically what I was doing, the simplest way to explain it, I was buying it from one site because somebody had either sold the second before and sold so much that it had moved the pool. So basically, the price had moved because there was a lot more to sell than to buy, for example, or because for some reason on one side there was more liquidity than the other, or it was marketed better, or there was better market makers, or the AMM was better, or whatever it is, you know. But all I was doing is buying on place A and selling it on place B and collecting the difference. Now, obviously, just as markets go, and this was the same thing on Wall Street, and it's going to be the same thing in crypto, throughout time, market participants get better. And essentially, I was starting to realize that like I was making a lot less money 2 months after I had begun, for example. So then I was like, okay, like I need to find a way to be faster, because like those opportunities were being like pulled under my feet, right? So the way I did it was I had a tracker that would like track basically really large ERC20 stablecoin transfers, and I would see like, okay, like this guy bought let's say 200,000 worth of a stablecoin you've never heard of before, and he was moving it from one wallet to another. Well, I could expect that throughout the next X couple of days that would come for it to sell. So I would tag the wallet and I put notifications, and as soon as it sold, I would go on the market where he sold it and see if the price had moved, and if it had, I would try to arb it. That's essentially the easiest way I can explain it. Now, nowadays, those trades don't exist anymore because systematic traders have basically taken all of the opportunities away. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot find trades like that at all. That's kind of the interesting part of what I want to say, is that market gets more and more efficient throughout time, and that will always be. But that also means that certain markets are more efficient than others. Like if you trade on Binance, the market is going to be far more efficient than it is on some random exchange you've never heard of. That's because there is more money. That's because it's more safe. So there's people willing to put more money on it. There's countless reasons why the market is better, but it also means that all the other markets where maybe you're holding a bit more risk of holding your money there and things like that, you're essentially taking the risk, but because you're taking that risk, you have more opportunities. So, for example, you'll see markets that have uh, that are moved like 0.5%, while they should be closer to zero. So you can take advantage of that and arb on whatever other website you can, like Binance. And this still happens today, by the way. Like I still trade sometimes on some really dodgy sites that you would never believe I would be willing to put more than $5 on it, just because the opportunity is so good that I'm like, whatever. Like if I lose 1 grand, it's okay, because like as long as this trade is successful 5 times, I'll get back my money. And I think the chance of ruin, so the chance that I'm losing it all, is a lot less than 20%. So it's a good trade, at least in my mind. When I do it, I think it's a good trade. It's very difficult to calculate those odds. It also comes from like being used to do it, and having some kind of like, okay, well, this exchange exists for like 2 weeks. Why does it exist? Why was it started? What are the wallets? Are the money basically being recycled between wallets so that it seems that it's getting traction? Did people with large amounts put money on the site, etc., etc.? And basically, this is the really, really, really easiest way I can put it, is the way you make money in crypto, doing what I do, is either because you're willing to take risks that other people don't, or even better, it's because you're essentially willing to put more time and effort into doing something that it cannot scale. So you cannot do with $10 million, but you can do it with 10K, or because it's going to take so much time to compile the data and to do all the tests that people will rather look into something else. And that's essentially 95% of my edge, is just that, willing to put more work into it, or accepting risks that others are not willing to, because I think that the risk is smaller than they're estimating. That's like 90% of my trades fall into those two categories.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to write down what you just said there because I think it's a great quote. You're either willing to take risk that other people won't, or you're willing to put more work into, I guess, testing and data analysis in order to make something work. That's a super interesting point. So, I mean, that kind of ties in nicely to my next question, which is effectively about your current trading style. I mean, I mean, there's an ongoing joke in the server that you're our quant, which is, I mean, you say it's not true. People say it is true. I think you probably employ a healthy mix of discretionary and quantitative trading methods. So there's probably some truth to it. Probably not as
Yeah.
much truth as people like to think. So I'm just wondering, where do you fall on that spectrum? Because I'm sure you have guys in your circle who are actual quants and look at you and think that guy is as discretionary as yeah. Whereas for us, looking up
Yeah.
at you, it seems the other way around. So how do you think you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the reason why I say that I'm not a quant is very easy. It's simply because my coding skills are nowhere near good enough to where they should be, so that people so that I can call myself a quant. Simply because like I can write like 3 lines of Python, and then that's probably the top of my abilities. I've never looked into it, and yes, it's cost me a lot of money from time to time, but I'm in a situation now where I can get other people to help me and do essentially like I only have 24 hours in my day, right? Like I'd rather be spending that time testing things and finding opportunities, and then working with guys that are like actually good at coding and who have like 5, 10, 15 years of experience, who will like essentially be so much better than I could ever dream to be, and working together and being like, look, like you use my research, I use your code, everybody's happy, we work together, and we find some sort of agreement that way, and that's all. Like it doesn't have to be so black or so white, right? I'm a hybrid trader, which means like I trade discretionary most of the time, but I also have systematic strategies that are fully taken care of, that are completely autonomous, where I don't have to do anything. And then there's some where like most of everything is taken care of, and then I need to do discretionary, like I need to hedge it properly, or whatever it is that's happening, some sort of event happens, and I need to take care of it, that's not being taken care of it autonomously. That's fine. I'll do that. But basically, I'm not a quant because I don't know how to code properly, and I am technically a quant because I use quantitative strategies, which means using data to trade other than looking at the chart and making a decision based on that. So it's a bit of a gray area. I don't like to say that I'm a quant because I know proper quants that are actually like so talented. It's difficult to grasp, honestly, how good they are. And if I feel like I'm the biggest larp if I say I'm close to whatever they are doing, right? But essentially speaking, all I do now is try to find a strategy that I think makes sense. Once I have that strategy, I try to look at the best way to collect the data. Often the data means, can you please open this and see, like, get the trading data of that pair for the last 30 days, and then we look at it, and if we find something that's out of the ordinary or something we can take advantage of, we keep it. But it's also important for me to say that, like, people assume that I have like strategies every other day. Like, literally speaking, I probably go through 35 attempts to it's probably like 30 to 1, the ratio, where I spend like 30, I try 30 different strategies and I only end up taking one that's successful throughout time. It's a lot of just trying stuff and realizing that you're actually stupid because that was never going to work, but you didn't realize it when you when you began, or things like that, right? Like, it's so much trial and error, and that's also because, like, I'm not the best, and I'm still learning. Like, I have no problem saying that many people on Twitter are much better than I am, and that's okay. And if you don't understand that, and if you can't tell yourself that, you're gonna lose a lot of money. I have, going back on what we spoke on with the ego. There is, like, for example, there's so many smart people that do MEV, right? I'm not going to go into depth because it's such a complicated topic, but basically a lot of nerds, they fight against each other because it's one big game, and whoever wins takes the money from the rest. And essentially speaking, like, so many smart people go into that because it's like the highest level stuff you can do. That's where they all go, and there's some sort of ego into trying to be the best, while instead, they could just be doing things I'm doing and be so much more successful. But because they have sort of that ego and the want to beat everybody else, I can essentially just work my way through working on things that nobody seems to be caring about, and just collecting a bit of free money on the side because they would rather fight against each other, and rather than find like spaces where it's a lot easier. And that same goes for like many other things. It's not only in crypto, but I think if you
Poker,
understand that, like,
surely.
oh yeah, poker is huge. Like, basically, like, you're the seventh best player in the world, right? And you sit down at the table with the sixth best player in the world. You're the sucker. Like, you're the guy that's gonna be paying everybody, even though you're the seventh best in the world. But you're sitting at a table with the six other best players in the world, and you're the sucker. You're gonna lose your money, and it's the same in trading. Like, basically, I know people are gonna ask, like, what if I wanted to be doing what you're doing? What should I do? And literally, I would say, don't trade. Look, open charts, open order books, and look at shit that's like not getting any trading. That on like exchanges like Qcoin or Gate or all the mid-tier exchanges, because I don't want to shill exchanges where you might get rugged, because that's, I'm not taking that responsibility. But look at those exchanges. Look at shit that's not trading. Look at shit that's getting so heavily manipulated you can't even believe it. And go into it and, like, understand, like, who the fuck is marketing this and trying and moving price up every 15 minutes. Why are they doing it? Are they trying to sell money? Or what's the point? Are they laundering? Are they doing some whitewashing? And spending time just looking at stuff, and just taking, yeah, literally just spending time and just watching stuff happen is the best way you'll learn. And honestly, like, I've got a friend on Twitter, Alba, who worked under Paul Tudor Jones, so like arguably one of the greatest traders of all time. He worked at his firm, and he was like, yeah, when I was an intern, the first 2 months we were just stuck having to watch tick data and order book data all day without putting a trade on for 2 months every day for 9 hours a day. All they did was look at charts and look at data. Like it's just crazy how after some time you're gonna be able to pick stuff up even if you're not looking for it. Just things that little anomalies that are gonna be like, oh yeah, actually this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? And then you can look into it. Sort of growing that intuition is so big, and it's helped me make a lot of money. Even though like a lot of traders and a lot of quants like to use the phrase of like I felt it in my balls, but it's true. And no matter your trading style, at some point intuition kicks in as long as you've seen the same thing happen enough times.
Right. Yeah. That gut feel or ball tingle. I actually spoke about it recently on Twitter. It is something that comes with experience, and after a while, you almost can't say why. You're just looking at something. You're like, oh fuck, that looks heavy, and you don't really know why. But it's because your brain has seen that exact price action pattern play out 100 times before, and in 70% of cases, the price is dumped. So you're looking at that, and almost subconsciously, you're thinking, I recognize that that price is heavy here, even though maybe the price action itself isn't suggesting that. But yeah, it's interesting. I think, and that's probably the anti-quant, right? That's remarkably discretionary, isn't it? Having a gut feel or having intuition, because you're not relying on data, then you're relying on yourself, right?
Absolutely. And then funny part is like my mentor, who is an Australian guy who's not on Twitter anymore, unfortunately, so I can't shill his account, but is a wonderful guy, and honestly one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And he is actually very autistic, and he's okay with me saying this. We joke about it all the time, but he understands numbers in a way that I can't grasp. He is probably close to savant level in mathematics, and he is able to sort of just to put it into perspective, like I put a bet on with him at the beginning of the year, so that he for 3 months he had to trade every single pair on Bybit, and he had to have at least 25,000 on each pair throughout the year. And the bet was like, you have to be profitable, otherwise you lose the bet. And he returned like 22% after 3 months or something insane. And it's just like he has an understanding that I can't grasp. And even he told me, although he never takes discretionary trades, he only basically just makes his bots better and stuff like that. Never presses buttons. He tells me that most of the time where he makes actual big money is because he had a tingling sensation in his balls and he changed what his bots were doing. And funnily enough, I spoke about this with you, Follis, either this weekend, I think, where I said like, every time I ask him what his biggest edge is, he just keeps telling me like, oh, I'm just lucky. Like you have to understand sometimes that like it doesn't matter how good you are, whatever you do, like variance will kick your ass at some point. Like and it's very difficult. People don't understand that, and it's one of the biggest mistakes I see on Twitter. Like people love to talk about alpha and edge, and they don't understand what either of those mean. Like it's really hard to know if you actually have an edge, mathematically speaking, because you need so much data. Like you need to be taking the same trade like 100, 200 times in order to be somewhat sort of having an idea of whether what you're doing is working or not. And most people are like, oh, this trade worked 5 times, and then 5 times has been successful. Like I have so much edge. And in reality, they're like, yeah, you're gonna lose money on the long run, but you've just gotten lucky with variance. And there's many such cases on many different things in life. But it's tough in trading because the human brain doesn't really allow you to see doesn't really allow you to understand percentages and big numbers, and sort of having to. I think that's a big edge, but I don't know if I can explain it. Like rewiring your brain in a way, like of like understanding that like your emotions are worthless, and that the only thing you should care about is what data says. And even if you think you're doing well, look at the data, and if data says you're not doing well, you're not doing well. And never second guessing what what your data says, whether you're testing something, a new strategy with support and resistance and triangles and whatever else some of you use. Like, it doesn't matter. Even if you're doing that and like you're realizing like, okay, like actually if I like look back like enough data, I go back to like 2 years of data on Bitcoin, it looks like this is not successful, but the last like 2 months it's been successful. Maybe something changed. Really ask yourself, did something actually change? If you look at the chart, is Bitcoin trading very differently, or is it just that it's variance is on the right side of for this strategy? And like, it's so hard to really get your mental game like so sharp that like you can actually just not listen to your emotions and not be like, actually I'm just gonna double the size this time because like it went wrong 3 times, so this time it's definitely gonna be different. Like, it's so difficult to teach that to people who don't have like sort of a math rooted mind. And I'm not saying that as it's a bad thing, man. Like, I suck at so much shit in this world, like you have no idea. I'm just blessed that I'm decent at maths, and decent is a big word. And just I just did I'm very lucky because I managed to do my shit and 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 do it by myself, and essentially just trying stuff and realizing what works and what doesn't. And I think that's what a lot of people should be doing, because when I started, it used to break my mind when big traders and people I looked up to were like, don't do what I'm doing, find your own thing. And I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to find my own thing? I don't know what my own thing is. I don't know what even trading is. And like now 5 years later, as I look back, and I'm like, fuck, like they were right. Like, finding your own thing that you're good at is important. And even outside of trading, like, are you happy to read 300 pages a day? Can you curate data better than other people? Can you make Excel spreadsheets better than other people? All of those things, like, those things have actual value in what we do. Like, there is nothing um entirely wrong about, like, fuck, I'll say this is gonna sound so insane, but I had a friend who was 100% sure he found edge in using in using Japan and using the weather in Japan to predict the price of Bitcoin. And he essentially built a whole fucking model for like 2 months to predict what the weather was gonna be like in Japan and to either buy or short given that data. And he outperformed for like 3 months, severely outperformed the market. And to this day, I still bully him because there is no fucking way that's actually an edge. But at the same time, who am I to fucking judge? Like, is it actually an edge? Was it actually an edge? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. It worked for him. He ended up blowing up 3 years later. It's a bit sad, but he now works at Jane Street, so I'm guessing blowing up was not so bad. But it was a funny trade. I'm just trying to show you that, like, there's so many different things you can test, and there's no shame in being like, this is never gonna work, or this is gonna work, or Benny will say like, this is such a stupid thing to test. Like, just do it. Even if it doesn't work, you're not wasting time. You're gaining so much insight on how things work. Like, just by wasting my time on strategies that never worked, I probably learned more than working on strategies that did work. And I mean this by understanding how markets work, and how to take advantage of certain spots. Like, it's a big advantage, honestly speaking. And like, just being okay, and understanding that you're gonna lose money most likely for a while. And not only that you're gonna lose money, but you're also probably gonna be wasting your time on a lot of things that you're gonna look back on and be like, what was I doing? And that's okay. Like, waste your time, waste as much time as you can. Like, most people waste time watching Netflix. Like, if you can afford to, and if you have enough time, waste your time watching a chart and things that makes no sense. Doesn't matter. You're gonna look back, you're gonna cringe. I cringe at so many things that I did, but I regret nothing, because without it I wouldn't be where I am today, realistically speaking.
That's inspiring stuff. Yeah, something I read a few years ago and it's stuck with me ever since is try to become more comfortable with being bored, because sometimes your best ideas come to you when you're just sitting with, a relatively empty mind. And it's stuck with me because, we live in an attention economy, right? It's like we sit down and the first thing we want to do is throw on the TV, take out our laptop, take out our phone. We just can't stand that 30 seconds of having nothing to do. When in actual fact, having that time to just reflect and think about things is actually extremely important for growth, development, be it personal or professional, whatever the case may be. And sometimes your best ideas come to you when you're just sitting there with an empty slate. So yeah, that resonates with me. I like what you're saying. If I could go back a step and talking about your trading again, how, let's say for argument's sake, let's say I'm a price action trader. I've been trading for a year or two. I'm on this call. I'm listening to Beni, and I'm saying, "Fuck, that sounds like a really interesting trading style, blending discretionary and quantitative methods. This guy Beni sounds smart." How does someone? What would your advice be to someone who wants to trade like you? What do they read? Where do they learn? What do they do? What do they test? What skills do they need to acquire in order to trade in a similar way to the way you trade?
And that's a good question, and realistically, I don't know if I have an answer. Like, the reason people ask, like, why did you go and trade like this more quantitative way instead of trading with charts or whatever else you use. And the only reason that there is not because I thought I was intellectually superior or anything that people have told me in the past. Like, the only reason is because it made sense to me. I looked at two prices, and prices were different, and it didn't make sense as to why the price was different. So I took advantage of it, and it really only started that way. And then after time, I looked into, like, there's some trades I make every day that literally all of you could do. That mean no. I can even share trades. You know what? Okay, let's share some trades. So there is something really big that for some reason retail doesn't really care about. Perhaps because it's not interesting for them, because the returns are not interesting enough. But it's kind of like people have this assumption that they're going to get extremely rich very quickly with trading instead of trying to compound smaller gains. But there is a type of trade that's called basis trades, and essentially imagine that you have, say, you have Bitcoin and you have Bitcoin futures and Bitcoin spot. And Bitcoin futures is trading $100 above Bitcoin spot, right? Now you know what the funding rate is. The funding rate is essentially, basically, that's important for people to understand because many people don't know that. But the only reason funding rate exists is to make sure that futures price stay as close as possible to spot price. Essentially, the price of funding changes by, there's more. I'm very narrowing it down in a very comprehensible way. There are more things. Don't quote me word for word for what I'm saying, but essentially what you need to know with funding is that the prices change on funding because of the divergence in price between futures and spot. And essentially you can take advantage of those difference in prices, because you know that if funding is cheap enough, there is an incentive to move that back in line, because you will make the spread, the difference between futures and spot, you'll keep if you're able to arb it down. And that's interesting. You'll make a few BPS, basis point, essentially a few percentage or a bit less than a percent. But if you do that many times, it becomes very interesting, because you're finding a way that's not too difficult, and that you can just basically, how we call it, hammer price back in line and make some money. And when you do that a few times and you understand it, and you can start looking at borrowing tokens to sort of taking advantage of it and doing it on leverage and things like that. But once again, like, people need to understand that I know many people who've done trades like that and didn't understand that, like, oh yeah, like, price is going to come back, so there's no risk. I'll just leverage 20x and everything's going to be fine. And turns out that's not how it works, and they've exploded. Because ask the guys that did sell last year and how that trade went for them. Ask VC. Well, now he's called LARP Capital on Twitter. He's a great friend of mine. We speak every day, and he was in that trade, and he's partly the reason why sell went to like $3 instead of like 40 cents or whatever it was. When it skyrocketed, it was because he was short huge amount trying to capture the difference between futures and spot, and people took advantage of it and bid very high to the point where he was going to get liquidated. He had to get out. There was no liquidity. Prices went kaboom, and it went very high. And he essentially took that trade thinking, I'm just going to make 1 or 2%, and he ended up losing 40%. So always know that no matter the trade you take, there is no free money. Or if there is free money, just take it and run, because that's likely not going to happen for a very long time. Because this market is getting much better. I swear to God, I can see a difference a year ago and today. And people say, yeah, market makers are leaving and TradFi is leaving. Doesn't matter, because I can guarantee you some other people are joining and they're getting better, and the market is getting better, even though Twitter doesn't seem to agree. I will also say, that's a side note, I have strong opinions of Twitter, especially in this space, and a lot of people are sharing great insight, and I found some really awesome friends on there, but the vast majority, unfortunately, don't really know what they're talking about, and or that they know one part and then speak about another in which they do not comprehend enough to be giving opinions. But that's social media overall, and never just truly believe what people say unless they have a track record or some sort of it's not because they have a lot of followers that they know what they're speaking about, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think most people here will be somewhat familiar with your outspoken views of some of the bigger accounts on CT, particularly people who shill small caps.
But I want to give, sorry to cut you, Follis. I want to give an opinion I want to give a reason, as to why I do this, because many people think I just don't like the injustice of them taking advantage. And yes, well, that is entirely true. But the reality is that they're stealing money from the market. Because if I'm going to take the most obvious one, and people might not agree with me, and that's okay, you're entitled to your opinion. But the way Haska does it, he buys up a large percentage of he basically spoofs the market, so make sure the market doesn't move too much, so that he buys a lot and then he tweets it so that the price goes up, right? The problem is that he's going to be selling into that move up, and he's going to, or it's just like front running announcement, like if somebody has insider knowledge, he's going to reduce the move that was supposed to happen if somebody was not doing illicit activities. So basically, he's costing everybody else that's trading it money because he is front running whatever news is going to come out. And yes, you can make debates that go really in depth of like how liquidity works and the impact it has, but the bottom line is he is stealing money, and most people are, and it's honestly very annoying to me, because the reason why I'm trading, and this is, again, it's everybody has their own opinion, and that's fine. I'm not judging anybody, but I trade because when I was a kid, I was not able to do sports, and I was not able to be competitive with other people. And I've always been very competitive, and I always loved games, and I see trading as the world's hardest game, where the participants are better than any other game in the world, and more knowledgeable than almost any other game in the world. And essentially, your goal is to find a way to beat the game and make money. And everybody should have access to the same information, and should have access to essentially the same sort of opportunities. And that's just not the case with people that take advantage of those people. So yes, I think it's injustice, and yes, I think taking care of your followers is sort of disgusting, but it's also because they're just costing everybody else money, and that's just basically what stealing is. After we can discuss the ethics. I don't care. It's not my place to say if it's right or wrong. I should share opinions, and everybody, it's like opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. You're free to have yours. I'm not going to judge you for it, but it truly angers me because people work very hard in order to better themselves, and even worse when people steal money from their followers. It's like you're not stealing money from people like me who are on the markets every day. You're stealing money from like the blue collar worker who moved like 50 pounds of concrete today to be able to put $200 away and try to make more money on crypto. And I think that's frankly quite disgusting. But the real reason is because they're stealing everybody, and it's unfair to you, it's unfair to everybody trading, and it shouldn't happen. And that's why there are laws against it on Wall Street. And hopefully, if this market ever gets regulated, which I am not saying I'm for, but it will happen one day, that will stop. And that will be one of the positives from regulation entering the space.
Well, speaking of regulation and the crypto space in general, what are your thoughts on crypto as a market? What are your thoughts on where it's going and where it's likely to arrive in the future? Like, let's say 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Because obviously you're someone who engages with it every day. You're someone who's been around for a long time relative to the market. Where do you see it going?
First of all, I'll begin by saying that I'm nobody and I'm just as stupid as everybody else. So, like, I don't actually know, and if I did, I'll probably be much richer than I am. But the part that's probably very interesting is going to see the actual technological development, because um, crypto, as much as we love the Ponzi's and making money, the blockchain itself has the ability to truly change things in our society and make them better. I think tokenization uh, could become huge and hopefully have a lasting impact. And I do think that crypto could become a net positive. I've been very vocal of saying that I don't think crypto currently and blockchain is a net positive for society. I just don't see it that way, at least at the moment. But I truly believe that there is some hope, and we can see sort of a shift in the next couple of years. I think that there are a lot of ideas being thrown around surrounding not only payment system but so many different things that are very interesting and that could essentially elevate industries as we know it, especially supply chain and all those spaces, authenticity and even just making voting through blockchain, it's immutable. It's very would be very difficult for anybody to take advantage of to take advantage of votations, whether being political or anything else, using crypto. So there are definitely ways to other than just betting up and down, and sort of it was very difficult for me the last couple of years because I was always an idealist and held crypto to such high esteem, and I always had this idea of it changing the world, and I still frankly do, but things have unfortunately changed due to the reality of the actors in the space, and they just look around. Like, there's not that many people who do things for the greater good, unfortunately, and maybe we're just unlucky and things will change. And many people have brought up that it was the same during the 90s bubble, and probably was. I wasn't there to see, but it's likely that it's gonna have a lasting impact. It's likely that it's gonna be a net positive and the technology is gonna remain. Will crypto Bitcoin be up 300,000 or whatever? I do not know, and frankly, um, I don't really care. I'm just here to tag along, and as long as there is something to trade, I will trade it. Um, Deep down, do I want Bitcoin to succeed? Absolutely. I have a lot of my net worth still in Bitcoin. A lot of people saying ETH will overtake Bitcoin, and I would be happy, but I've always been, and I've always said I was. I just stopped talking about it because the community is so cancerous. But I've always been a Bitcoin maxi. I think it represents everything. Why I was in crypto and Monero too. You know, I think I truly think privacy has its place in crypto and needs to be sort of fought for, because it's something that's going to be taken away from us very quickly unless we fight for it. And I saw John Z ask questions about KYC as well, and the normalization of basically everything in crypto becoming a fintech instead of saying what it truly was, which is in decentralized nature of with an ability for everybody to participate. And the truth is that I am not happy that when you open up, when you try to get on an exchange, you have to share your information, and honestly, that does not make me um, very optimistic about the future of the space in the ways that I envisioned it. However, there is still it's very dark because like the problem is that if I say I'm against KYC, there's gonna be a whole problem of bad people taking advantage of it. But it's a shame that because of bad actors, the good actors can't appreciate something, right? Like you're taking away something from 100% of the population because 1% of the population is going to use it for the wrong reasons. And there are many such cases, and in society that we have to take that we have to take that counterparty and just agree with it. But I just don't think it's necessary to do in crypto. Like today, like people think that crypto is like so many transactions are used for nefarious causes. Today, according to Oracle's data, um, there is less nefarious activities going on with crypto than there are going on with liquid cash in the world today. And that just goes to show, like, yes, there are some bad actors, and there will always be. But I truly believe that there is a way to keep anonymity, to keep security, and to keep privacy to a high esteem, and to sort of make an argument for it. I think zero knowledge proof could potentially sort of eliminate the KYC issue, because we could sort of you could use zero knowledge proof and sort of use a single point of data. So like you use your um not your ID, but you'd have a DeFi ID that would like be brought all your accounts together, and you'd be used through zero knowledge proof. And this could technically be like your account. It wouldn't share your actual name and your actual information, but it would put all your data towards one point, and could be sufficient. But the way the world is going, and I did a lot of research on KYC and AML in the banking world, and throughout other industries, and it's very difficult to see um, that not happening with crypto. However, I will say that just like in the banking world, there are countries that are more open to it than others. And after, the problem is that those countries are um, also taking part in the nefarious activities because they're open to everybody, and that's sort of an ethical issue for many people. But um, I think it's very likely that if my country, which is Switzerland, in case some of you don't know, changed their opinions on privacy and on laws, which would be very unlikely because Switzerland has had a sort of a straight idea for a very long time. But if Switzerland changes that, and think it's likely I will move to a country that allows no KYC, that allows anonymity, that allows privacy in a sense that is clearly being taken away in the Western world today for many different reasons. And I'm not here to talk about politics. That's not the goal. But um, I really value all of those, and I think privacy should be a human right. And if that's taken away, well, it'll be a very, very sad time for crypto, and I'll probably have to relocate, and everybody will be open to doing what they want to do, and I'm not going to be judging either way. But that's my opinion, I think.
That's fascinating. And yeah, I thought you're not from France then, no?
You're funny, man.
I just assumed, well, you speak French, don't you? So
for those that don't get it, I don't like
very
French
thin.
people.
That's
Okay,
very thin
yeah.
ice as an Irishman who speaks English as my first language, but we won't get into that.
Right, but I'm gonna do the famous. I'm not racist, but no, I'm kidding. I have many friends who are French. My girlfriend is French. Unfortunately, I made that mistake.
Same, yeah.
It is what it is. It's what
We're in
it
the
is.
same boat.
But
Yeah.
we have some just like the Swedes don't like the Danes, and it's just some banter between countries. I don't actually hate the French. or
No,
maybe
not
maybe
most,
one.
not most of the time, just a little bit, yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, speaking of macro and like long-term predictions, are you someone who thinks that? Let me put it this way: if you know Abe Trade from Twitter, he very it's something that he said in one of his articles, which stuck with me, is he doesn't like to make these long-term predictions because he can barely say what he's going to eat for lunch tomorrow, much less say
Yeah,
what Bitcoin price is going to do. And then he goes on to say that for him, trying to make an estimation as to where Bitcoin price will be in 6 months is just an exercise in futility, because he doesn't think
yeah.
that he doesn't think he has the skills or the know-how to do it. And that's a very fair appraisal of his own ability. And I think I'm much the same. I don't like making these sweeping macro predictions like Bitcoin to all-time high between 2024 and 2020. That kind of stuff. It doesn't interest me, but I also don't think that I'm anyway qualified to make those kind of sweeping estimations. And I think mostly people who do it on Twitter are doing it for engagement, and that's its own thing. But I'm wondering, do you see yourself like what kind of time frames are you looking at BTC on? Do you have a maximum time frame that you're comfortable analyzing BTC on? Are you more of a just looking at intraday price action kind of a guy, or how do you look at the Bitcoin chart, and what time frames are you analyzing it on?
Well, um, it's difficult to say. So first of all, what you said about arbitrate and your opinion, I do not actually look at. I do not make price predictions. I do have ideas of where I estimate uh, Bitcoin to trade being higher or lower, but I do not I do not say, for example, at top of the bull run, I think Bitcoin is going to be at 120k. Like this is so futile, and the problem is like it creates sort of this false sense of, okay, well then I said 120k, but now like it's stalling, and there's some sort of reversion at 98k, and like maybe I should take profits, but then I also said I wouldn't sell before, and you're sort of creating mental hurdles for yourself that don't have to be, right. Like that's also people, I mean, like, I'm not saying don't use stop losses. Very frankly, I think most people should, but I often don't use them. And one of the reasons I don't use them is because I don't use price to determine whether my trade is right or wrong. There's many reasons why price could move up and down. Maybe Bitcoin fell and the rest, and my asset fell down too. It doesn't eliminate the reason for my trade to be on. And when I take sort of when I look into that, it's kind of like different styles of trading as well. Like some people are really, really good. Like I know some people who genuinely are amazing traders. They trade prediction markets, and they sort of like use data to make predictions of events and stuff like that, and sports as well. And that's fine, but that's just not what I do. However, you've asked how sort of what time frame I used. I think like the most I'd look into is sort of estimating when liquidity is likely to come back. So say like we have a bull run, then followed by 4.5 years of nothing, then another bull run, 4.5. As long as Bitcoin keeps getting somewhat close to that framework, and so many quants disagree, by the way. Like none of my friends agree with me, but past events don't equal future events. But I think that's bullshit for Bitcoin, simply because it was hard coded to be that way. The Bitcoin is coded for every 4 years to have a halving, and to have less production, and that should have an impact on price, and blah 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 and blah blah. But there is at some point where halvings will be they won't be as important as they are today. I still think that, given the daily issuance still to this day is very important, I still think that reducing in half is going to make a major difference, and so on and so on. And I think looking into it through that way, and just really left curving it and being like, bro, like half Bitcoins are going to be sold from what it is now, like are going to come into the market to be sold by miners. Like that makes a difference, at least until the market proves differently. I'm going to believe in that, and many people disagree, honestly, and many very smart people disagree. I'm kind of left curving this one, but I truly believe in it. So yeah, I have no reason to think otherwise until I'm proven wrong, essentially. But that doesn't mean I'm putting all my net worth into it left, right, and center. That means that I'm using it to sort of make predictions, whether I want to hold spot USDT or spot percentage of Bitcoin, percentage of this, whatever. But like I also think um, portfolio management is very important, both long term and short term. But we can get into this really deep
So
or not. But yeah.
yeah, 100%. So something you just touched on there is Bitcoin and the way in which it's coded, and I think that's a very interesting. It's a very interesting way of looking at it, but it kind of takes me into a question that I just saw from Boris here, which is whether you have any opinion on the theories about the algorithms in trading. Now, I don't really know too much about it. I don't follow ICT too closely, and I certainly don't follow. Are they called the Enigma? The guys looking for the secret algorithm that drives the markets. ICT traders in the chat can probably tell you a bit more about it than I can. I don't really follow these guys on Twitter, but I do see it on my feed from time to time. Do you think that there is like maybe an algorithm running the markets that can be gamed, that can be systemized, and then therefore taken advantage of? Do you think that it is that hard coded? Maybe not necessarily with BTC exclusively, but I guess ICT talks more about is it
Well,
indices markets, right?
so as in like there's some sort of godlike algorithm that's running the market. Is that the idea? Because I'm
I,
not gonna lie, I don't know anything about the ICT
I
framework. But
I think that's the idea, where it's like there
yeah,
are
okay,
forces unseen, or like an unseen algorithm running the markets, and it's your job as a trader to like peel back the layers and expose your third eye, Illuminati,
okay.
hashtag conspiracy theories, etc.
Um, well, I'll put it this way. I think that's the best way I can explain it. I'll put $1 million on the line to anybody that thinks he can prove that this is happening today. There is the yeah, I don't think that's even close to being possible. And there's a few reasons for it. Mainly because uh, bots trade against each other too. Like you need to understand that sometimes I find I trade Bitcoin to hedge, and somebody trades Bitcoin. Some of my friends work on trade Bitcoin for another reason, and we're expecting two different outcomes. And that's okay. Like there's not one algorithm, and when we make algorithm, we don't all do the same thing. Like if we all did the same thing, we would just all move the price up and then move the price down collectively, and there would be huge liquidity prices both sides. Like it's just not what's happening. And nobody, if that was true, right, that somebody had an algorithm that was running the market, uh basically nobody would be profitable, unless if you could somehow figure out what they were doing. But that just doesn't work. You could track it with liquidity. I mean, like you could reverse engineer it after enough data points. Like there's just no real way that this is possible, at least not in crypto. I don't know equities well enough. I think truthfully it's possible to do that with options, for example, because there's just so many variables and data that you can use, that you can probably run, and liquidity is kind of low, so you can probably run option markets very differently than you do from futures and spot. But I just realistically, I don't think anybody is able to make, well, let's just say if somebody was able to hard code a code that was fully scalable, that means that no matter what, every year it would still do the same returns, even when you add a lot more money into it, and it was able to, likely then that we would know. The closest thing I can think of is probably Jim Simmons at Renaissance Technologies, who is absolutely destroying the market for the last 40 years. Was he? I mean, one of the to use quantity in trading, and is first absolutely butchered the market for 4 years. I think he still averages like something fucking insane, like 35% a year before fees, or even more, like something insane, like just with like 11 billion in AUM, something crazy. But he's just been better at analyzing data than others. He doesn't run the market. Like we don't exactly know what he's doing, but we know how he does it, and he has absolute terabytes of data accumulated from like 40 years of trading, and that they use to create those models. And the guys who create the models are Fields medalists and some of the most intelligent people in this world. And they're not running the market; they're just basically being better than everybody else at predicting what's going to happen. However, I can say that yes, it is possible actually to move markets, and I've done it in the past. Not that I'm very proud of it, but it is technically possible to take a random alt and make it do whatever you want, and it costing you not very much. But to do it through a whole market without anybody else who is also rich to take advantage of you, that's not possible. Basically, you can spoof any market, but if somebody wakes up and realizes, oh, you want to play games, I'm going to play games with you, he's going to be able to hurt you really bad, and he would be able to hurt even God if he wanted to trade, you know. So it's unfortunately not possible. Maybe there is some kind of secondary meaning that ICT, is it a guy or a girl? It's a guy, right? Or whatever this ICT figure is talking about whenever he talks about the absolute algorithm. But it's yeah, I would put a lot of money on betting the other side of that.
You heard it here, guys. Benny has exposed ICT. Max
Oh Lord, don't
exposure.
say that. I don't want to get retweeted to that.
Yeah, that's gonna.
I've seen the ICT guys on Twitter, man. They like
They're
their guy, man.
they're vocal. Yeah, they act cult, says NBA. They like their
Respect.
guy. You know. Yeah, I mean, good for them. Okay, here's one for you. You're starting today with $500 in your crypto trading account, and that's all you have. How would you grow that? How would you grow a small account, knowing everything that you know today?
Oh, that's such a good question. Uh, oh, how much money would I have?
Let's say 500. Let's say three figures, right? So under 1,000.
Okay. And the goal was basically to grow the account, and what's the risk like because like there's also something I want to speak about, that like especially when I started, I was trading using a lot of variance on my side. And what I mean by that is like I was trading too big because I was okay with losing a significant chunk of what I had, because my goal was to make it, was not to make a few $1,000s. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like people assume that like trading above what you should be and taking more risk is necessarily bad. Like in a full-blown bull market, you can take advantage of it, and many have. The problem is that unfortunately that the way they get rich is often the way they get poor. Is if you use that to your advantage and just full on like maximize it, like Alex Weiss did on FTX, and just throw huge money on leverage and just take advantage of like certain situations. Yeah, you'll make a lot of money, but the day it goes against you, you'll lose everything. But it's also like something you need to take into consideration, right? What's the goal of the $500? Is the goal to like um, build a portfolio so that you can show it to a company and be like, look, like I'm averaging X% on $500. This is like the simulation with 1 million, depending on what I would be able to do. And like you can show that what you're doing is working, right? Like you have some sort of framework for what you're doing, and it might help you get employed. Or your goal is just to make as much money as possible and don't care about losing it. Those two are very different. Now, what I would do, assuming you don't want to just burn the money, because you can just go into meme coins and just pray. But what I would do is likely I would start recording all the really shit exchanges. I'm not talking about the OKX and like the really bad ones, like Trader Ogre and all the security, the privacy guys who know all the non KYC exchange know what I'm talking about. But like all those exchanges that get very low volume, I would put my money there, and essentially taking advantage of very low liquidity stuff. For example, say something is trading like a few $100 a day, right? And the volume is like, let's say $2,000 a day. and there's massive wicks because there's no market makers. What you're going to do is basically find a way and just sit in front of your computer, pull out a piece of paper and say, okay, like every day there seems to be a big wick, and that wick is because somebody is buying or selling $100 and moving the price 7%. So on average, the wick is moving like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. That means that if I put my ask, so if I put my $500 a bit below their framework, like I put it at 4%, I can make 4% when the price comes down, right? So essentially, you'll tag the wick by providing liquidity. So the reason you're making money is because you're useful to the market and you're providing liquidity to the market that needs it, and then price will come back to basically normal, and then you'll be able to like over time just sell it a bit. And you can do some very basic market making by just providing liquidity where there is none. Not saying going into order books that have money left and right. I'm talking like the ones that have like literally not more than a few $100 in bid asks, and just putting some money there, seeing essentially what gets volume, what doesn't, and essentially you can take advantage of those pretty heavily. I mean, I would do that until I had like 10k probably, because there's enough pairs that you can just stack money on sells and then buys as well lower, and essentially then if you can code, I would even do a Python bot and just say like, or use Hummingbot or bots that already exist. You can do your research and just say like, yeah, you can like, if you choose all the pairs that have no market makers and say like, okay, if price goes down or up in a single 1 minute candle of more than, or no, just say put bids on both sides at 3% depth, for example. So if it goes up or down 3%, you'll have your ask there, and every time price moves, the bids and ask moves as well, so that you always have money at 3% depth. And that way, if somebody's looking to sell and will just market sell because there's no liquidity, he will fill into you, and then the price will come back to the median, so like the quote price, and you've bought it or sold it at 3%, and you've made basically 3% as long as you can reacquire them at the same price than you sold or bought them. And essentially you can do that on many pairs and make a few $100 a day if you do enough pairs, and it's pretty good way to run an account. A second thing I would look into is look into exchanges that have very high maximum funding. So things like OKX. OKX is quite famous for basically not giving shit on funding and allowing people to really move it quiet. Like you can manipulate funding so easily on OKX, just FYI. And the problem with that is that sometimes it just moves really fast one way or really fast another way. And the way you can take advantage of it is by doing what I said before, which is a basis trade. And I would recommend doing research on it. Trader, what's his name? TED Talk Macro, which is not a figure I personally like. However, he made a protocol called Basis, and he has a few YouTube videos on basis trades, and they're actually good sources. So I would recommend going to look at them if you're interested. And basically doing those trades on OKX, where in pairs that do like 20k, or futures pairs that do 20k a day. So it's really nothing because nobody's trading it, but you can take advantage of it and make some money because some bot or somebody is a bit stupid and didn't look at funding or not taking into account funding and things like that. So you can really sort of find those trades. I'm trying to think of trades that I can't do anymore with my size and that I can share these days, but there's also a way you can still actually arb things. For example, find pairs that's going to take quite a bit of research. And again, like, I know this sounds bad, but I'm sorry. Like, if you want to make money, you're going to have to put the work in. Like, there is no free money. Other people are willing to work harder than you, most likely. So one way you can make money is to track most coins that exist and that are not on CoinGecko or on CoinMarketCap, and that way you can. So then you use the how do you call it, the coin wallet address. So you use the coin's address, and then you can basically find like um, two exchanges that are trading at different prices because there's no API data, meaning like bots cannot go on CoinGecko or go on CoinMarketCap to see which one is moving most, like up or down. But basically, yeah, basically it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult for people who have bots to take advantage of those. And essentially, discretionary traders still have the ability to take that into account. I would also say so that those are three trades that I would recommend. There's another one that I can recommend, and it's basically leveraging yourself to the tits and trading news and doing what I do nowadays, because you can do it with much bigger size, but you can do it with lower size as well. And it's essentially like you want to capture as much data as you can. I've been recording data every day since 2017. I probably, honestly, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I probably am one of the people in crypto who has the most data on the most perps, just because I track everything I see, right? And essentially, I can use that data at any time to realize that maybe the same thing's happening over and over, and things that other people can't notice because they don't remember what happened in the 17th of April 2017, but I do. And basically just accumulating so much data and knowing so many different perps, and then whenever news hits, you can just leverage through the tits, and you can take profits early. It doesn't matter. Don't catch the whole move. Don't risk your capital, but just buy really big on the beginning of the news, and then just do that whole day and never take another trade. This is another thing. Like, trading is expensive. You're paying fees both ways. Like, so I keep saying it, and this is probably, if you have to remember one thing from this 1 hour and a half that I've been speaking and spewing bullshit, is do not, and I pray that you listen, overtrade. Most people trade probably 10 times what they should be trading. I've said on Twitter so many times, like, I only use full size on trades probably 5 or 6 times a year. That's once every 2 months. Like, I MGNR, which is likely the trader that won the most money in crypto and was the most successful, literally said discretionary traders should trade 5 times a year when they can pick up free money and then move on. And I honestly believe, from what I've seen, and forgetting about what he said and the fact that I look up to him, it is true. Like, you're paying money every time you trade, and many people don't realize that. And if you have no edge or very little edge, you're wasting your time. You're gonna make what you're gonna stay in front of your computer and look at your positions in hopes of making 4% a year. It's not going to make a difference for most of you, 4% a year. So just don't trade. You speak with your boys, go on Discord, whatever it is, work on accumulating data or another strategy that you're thinking of. But most of the time, and the vast majority of the time, you should not have a trade on. You can go look at my channel. I don't post many trades very often, but the difference is that, first of all, okay, that sounds a bit, I'm gonna sound like a cocky bitch, but that's okay, I don't care. If you can go back to the very beginning of my channel and now, I am almost 100% sure that my cumulative returns are above 200%. I did not use excessive leverage. I don't actually use leverage when I trade. I actually use less than the total balance most of the time. Two, I don't trade very often. I probably share like one trade a week, maybe even less. And I end up not paying fees and not marketing and market out of positions. And all of those things come into consideration much more than the average person understands. And if there is one thing that you could grasp, is that you don't need to be in a position. Somebody, my mentor told me this, and I think it's really, really, very, very real. Is like, either you want to be in a position all the time, every day you are in a position, no matter what. Like, you go to sleep, you're in positions, whatever. You're never out of position, or you're in positions very, very few times a year. And this is basically how you can not only take advantage of the free money as putting into quotation marks, but you can also simply just eliminate the sort of hardcore stress that kills so many people. And I know people that have been here for a long time know what I'm speaking about. Like Mercury can probably tell you about that too. Like it's like you're constantly thinking about price, and even if you're not really doing it to yourself, it just happens, and you get stuck into your own ways, and it affects your mental health. Well, if you're not really looking at charts, and price doesn't really matter because you're not in trade, but or you have spots that you can hold, it's just much better EV for both your life, your portfolio, and anything, to be honest.
That's such a fascinating answer. And yeah, that post by MGNR is one that I often think about. 5 times a year there's free money on the floor, pick it up. The default position for discretionary traders should be 0 open orders, 0 open positions. I think, yeah, it's something that I reckon most traders suffer from, is just an impulsion to be in a trade all the time, a feeling that this market is only going to be here so long. It's time to squeeze all I can out of it in the time that I've been given. Whereas actually that mindset is typically counterintuitive, because then you end up overtrading, taking suboptimal setups, and ultimately either making money in a less optimal way or not making money at all. And I think, yeah, it's something that a lot of traders could do well to keep in mind. Just scanning through some questions here. An interesting one from Shahir. How do you deal with losing streaks? What do you do differently when you're on a losing streak?
What do I do differently when I'm on losing streaks? Oh god, that's such a good question. The answer is nothing, and I think like that's what's the hardest, right? It's like your strategy is working, like, or at least you believe that your strategy is working, right? And you're going through a time where like you're losing trades, right? There was a time this year, I think maybe in March, I was down like huge, all right, and I just couldn't win a trade to save my life. And like, what did I change? Well, position size, because my balance went down. But apart from that, I changed nothing. Because if you're changing things, because, well, there's two different. I guess I should point out something. Are you losing money because you're doing something wrong and you're not following what you should be following, or are you losing money because the strategy you're using is currently not paying for whatever reason, whether it doesn't work, whether you don't have alpha anymore, or whatever it is, like whatever reason you have that could explain it. Because if you're doing something wrong, then yes, you're supposed to be you need to change something. But if nothing's changed and just your balance is moving up and down, and you're not doing well, either reevaluate whether what you're doing is going to work, and whether you actually have an edge, or, and it's difficult and it takes time, but change nothing. Absolutely change nothing. Because why would you change a soccer team that keeps winning and that will win at the end of the season? No, you won't. That's what trading is. Like, that over a certain period of time, after X amount of trades, you're supposed to win money. Losing is part of the game. I'm gonna lose. I lose probably more than everybody here, especially because I have such asymmetric bets. So like, I lose 80%, like 70% of trades I take with one strategy. And it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's gonna pay back. And understanding, again, that's what I said before, but like, understanding probabilities is so difficult for the human mind. But as long as you understand that, yes, you're gonna go through some periods of droughts, and it's gonna be very difficult, and even on your mental side. I think like, I played poker before coming to crypto for a while, and I think that's helped me a lot, understanding sort of basic ways of handling your portfolio. But basically, you want to be understanding that unless you're yourself making a mistake, or that you're realizing that your strategy doesn't work as you thought it did, you have to persevere, essentially. And I'm gonna post, I don't have it here, but Robot James, the guy I talked about before, posted a blog post about Edge, and the same strategy, if it was running 2 standard deviation worse than it should, running normally or running 2 standard deviation better than it should. Meaning that like those three options can happen at anybody at any times. It's not uncommon. And the difference was like 66% over 3 years between the bad one and the best one. It's huge. And like whether you want to admit it or not, everybody, especially traders that are good, will tell you that luck played a big part in their success. And usually, when somebody says it doesn't, that's kind of when I can tell that they're probably either LARPing or that they didn't really make it trading, but they made it through some other avenues. And again, I want to point something out that many people, including myself, given what I say and how I am on Twitter, think that the only way you should make it, I think, is on Twitter. Man, I'm gonna be very honest with everybody here on this call. I don't give a shit how you make it. If your goal is to make money and you're gonna shill Bybit or whatever, I have no problem with that. Please use every single avenue you can to squeeze as much money as you can. I have no problem with that. But as long as you're not hurting anybody or lying to anybody. If you follow those two, please like be your guest. It's not what I want to do with my life, and that's fine. Everybody's allowed to do what they want. I don't care. And I don't think less of somebody that does, as long as they do it the right way. Just wanted to point this out because I get this comment a lot. Why are you against people shilling reference? And I'm not. Please keep doing it. I just said that I wouldn't do it for myself. That's it.
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed. I mean, it's probably a perception that people might have on Twitter is that you're just always like trolling big accounts and flaming them, but I actually think it's the opposite. You're very conscientious and you have a strong moral backbone, which is I think it's a great thing to say about someone, but that often leads you into confrontation with people who might not see their followers the same way. They just see potentially exit liquidity for their bags. So I think having guys like you around to call people out is a net positive for the space, even if it sometimes looks like you're you're just engaging with these guys in a negative way, when in fact I think the opposite is true. I think you're trying to hold them accountable. So I actually really like I really like following your activity on crypto Twitter, and I know you said it got you down. It's something you spoke about at the start of the call, how
Yeah.
it has gotten you down recently, and I think that's just an indication. Sorry, I should explain to the people on the call what got Beni down was constantly seeing the same large actors in the space behave in immoral, unethical ways, particularly towards their followers. And I think it's a reflection on how you see the world, and how what a good heart you have is that you took real umbrage at that behavior and really let it get to you personally, which I think just speaks volumes about how nice a guy and how genuine a guy you are.
No, but
Um,
it's. I'm
Sorry,
sorry
go
to
on.
cut you, Follis.
No,
I'm
no, you're
sorry
fine.
to interrupt you. I just want to say one thing. It's not really that I think I have a better moral compass than others. I think that's kind of a load of shit, and to be honest, I don't care. The reality is, however, that I have worked so hard in order to be better than everybody else, or at least be better than the average market participant, so that I can make money. And the truth is that I've dedicated so much to this craft that I think it's so entirely unfair that other market participant can come into it and cheat and get paid handsomely for it with no sort of with nobody essentially giving a shit, even though they're stealing them too. That's what, because people just simply don't understand it, and that's okay. I'm not judging them. It's not their fault. But it's incredibly frustrating because I've been to in spots where I was in trouble financially speaking. I had lost money. Some people in my life rely on me making money so that they can go through with their lives, and having to look at them in their eyes and having DMs about, hey, shield my coin for 10K, and knowing that that money could potentially like actually change something in my life and make it so much easier, and really like killing the stress is was really difficult, because I think that a lot of those people also don't have to do that in order to put food on their table, right? And like, as much as people love to say like this is like yeah, this is PvP, like this is what it is, like you're just playing against other people, and like that's fine. I agree with that, and I love PvP. That's partly why I trade. But when PvP turns into uh, who can push the limits of the law or shit like this, then it has nothing to do with skill and more to do with your ability to accept an ethical dilemma. And again, like I'm not really judging anybody. Even on Twitter, like I talk shit because the guys are supposedly multimillionaires and they can't pay back a bet for 100K, or they can't. It's just so tiring. But I'm also doing it just because I like bullying. Like I'm not gonna stand here and be like my moral compass is not much better than many others. I just disagree with obvious injustice, and that's it. But at the end of the day, man, like if you need to rug some shit because you're putting money on the table and whatever, like I'm gonna talk shit about you, but deep down, do I get it? Maybe, honestly. I think crypto is at a point where like so much shit is like, yeah, you know, is so every day like such things happen and people lose money for the wrong reasons and whatever. Like I'm not the social justice warrior that's going to change anything in this industry, and I finally fucking understood that, because for a long time I thought it was my job, and I realized it didn't work. And a lot of people were very nice and came up to me and were like, look, like appreciate what you're doing, but it's not going to work out. Just take a chill pill. And that's also why I said that I was having a hard time on Twitter, because keep seeing the same actors and then seeing the new guys enter the space and see that they have a lot of followers, and that then they trust them and then they get taken advantage of. And it's this entire circle of things. And it's also like uh, a lot of people in this chat are not traders full time, and thankfully so. They do it because they try to put a bit more money on the side and pay for holidays or pay for little things on their life. And fuck, man, that's beautiful. Like those guys work their asses off all day long at a real job, while we're here sitting on our ass joking on Discord, so that they can put some money away and try to better their lives. And then you have those people that take advantage of it. Yeah, that fucking bothers me. But that's open to everybody, you know. Some people think it's okay. That's fine. I don't mind. Twitter is just a cesspit where everybody throws their opinion and hopes that their opinion is better than others. And I'm fully um, knowledgeable enough to know that I do the same thing. But the difference is my opinion is right and your boys are wrong. So just remember that.
I think that's going to be the takeaway from this AMA is that, yeah, don't fade Benny's opinion because he probably knows a lot more than you do. That's something I came to learn a long time ago, so don't worry, you
But
don't
then
need to
again,
teach
like
me that lesson.
yeah, but like there's a lot of things where we talk together, Follis, and like you know far more than me. And like that's kind of like the beauty of the game, right? Like it's too complex. There's too many things so that you can know better than everybody else, right? You might have a lot of knowledge in one sector or another, but it's I don't know anybody who is truly a man of all trades in this industry, and I honestly think they wouldn't do that well.
It would be
You need,
counterintuitive to be a jack of all trades rather than a master
yeah.
of a few specific disciplines in trading, I think.
I think I agree with you. Yeah, like yeah,
Yeah. So just moving on, I think we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. But an interesting question here from Seymour. He's talking about your market maker strategies, because I know that's something you've mentioned before, and I'll put my hand up and admit that I don't even know what those are. But how do you put those into practice? What does someone need to understand in order to implement a market maker strategy? I guess a question from my end: do you need to have a certain minimum capital in order to implement those strategies? I presume if you're making a market, if you're providing liquidity, if you're moving price, you would need to have at a minimum a relatively a decent sized stack. Although I suppose it depends a lot on the asset in question, how big the market cap is, and how big the daily volume is.
yeah. So I mean, God, this is ah fuck it. I'm gonna be super honest here. The truth is, I don't actually think my edge is that big. I don't. I actually think I'm probably negative EV in some spot, which means negative expected value. I don't think I'm actually winning money by market making. The reason why I do it though is because the learning curve is so steep, and you have to think so fast and take decisions so fast, and essentially sort of it forces you to be really, really, really tuned in. And the reason why I do it is simply because, one, I like to think I'm good enough, but I don't know if that's actually true. I think it's close. I'm probably somewhat break even. And but for example, like if I on Bitcoin, I'm losing money, and I know it. That's why I don't share it in my channel. Like the other guys are just so much better than me. I can't compete, and that's okay. That's what I comes in back into what I said before about ego and understanding your level against your competition. Like I will lose money if I market on Bitcoin. Now, how to start market making? I only started 3 months, 4 months ago, sort of looking into it. I've been trading since 2016 and professionally since 2019. So I've been trading for a fucking long time for crypto, at least for in the crypto space. Now, if I was in TradFi, probably wouldn't say a long time, but I've been in here for a while, and I've tried a bunch of other things. I honestly think that honestly, if I was trying to make money, I would not be market making. I'm just gonna put it that way. The reason why I do it, however, is because you can learn so much about. Um, I don't know how to translate this to English. Micro data, so basically like understanding how orders impact the market, how market orders, limit orders, how those impact. Like when you see it all day for 6 hours a day, those things you start to get clues on. And I only do it because I think it's making me a better trader in other aspects, right? I think I'm learning throughout doing it. I'm learning, and I'm also sort of not completely burning money, so it makes sense to do it. To answer your questions, though, you said something about the minute. Yes, you need a starting capital. I it's a so I don't know. See, this is the thing. Like usually, I always say this, but if you can't explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old, then you probably don't understand it well enough. And that's truly the situation I'm in. So clearly, I don't know what I'm doing well enough. But essentially, inventory is very interesting in trading. Sort of understanding how to deal with inventory and risk, and that's very, very interesting. I can share resources to it to everybody who are interested to sort of go and read about it, because even if you're never going to try to make markets, you can use it to understand sort of the broad idea of what the market maker is doing. And essentially, the people think the market maker's goal is to provide liquidity, and that's not really true. The market maker's job is yes to provide liquidity from the exchange perspective, but his goal is to trade. His goal is to make you buy expensive and sell cheap. That's his goal, is to move the price around and to take as much volume as possible, because he gets rewarded on volume, and in a way that he can basically take advantage of you. That's the goal of the market maker. Now, you can basically try your against if you really want to try and say you have like 10k and that you're willing to say goodbye to, because likely it's not going to go well. At least the first time I tried, it didn't go well. And you pick a random market that's not doing too much volume, but that's doing like 50k a day or so, and you understand the basics of how quoting works and spreads and all of that. You can sort of do your best at trying it out, right? Now, I need to point something out too, is that when I say market make, I say it in a very loose term, as in like I'm not market making like you see on Bitcoin, where like the price is moving every fraction of a second. That's just I'm doing it manually. I'm providing liquidity in spots where I think that it's undervalued and in spots where I think it's too expensive. What do I use? I use order book data. I use sort of aggregated data from all exchanges and things like that to sort of take that info and trade that. Basically, a market maker is really a scalper on a very small time frame. That's basically what it does. And the complexity is having the inventory. So say you're market making Bitcoin, you need to hold a lot of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes down, you're fucked. But if Bitcoin goes up, you're very happy. But sort of how to take advantage of that, because you can't hedge by shorting a lot of Bitcoin because you're holding it, because that's expensive, and you'll pay funding as well, and you'll pay fees and all of that. So you need to find ways to sort of reduce risk while doing that. And it's honestly like there is a reason why these days not very many crypto natives are still doing market making, and it's a lot of firms that have moved from TradFi who now do the heavy market making, because it's fuck you competitive, and like yeah, we just don't have the level for that, and that's okay. And honestly speaking, I'm probably not making money. I've been lucky, so I've been making some money, but realistically, I'm not making very much money on markets. However, I will say that technically speaking, if you want to start market making and you find an alt that's not doing too much volume, and that you think personally that it's gonna go up, and that in theory you wouldn't mind holding spot, then do it, because you're gonna learn a bit. And the worst case scenario is you sell before you wanted to sell, because anyways you're gonna hold it in spot, so that the treasury you're gonna have it. So if you want to try, do it that way. But I would honestly say that there are very many things you can try and do before going into that. And I don't think I'm making money. If you do believe you can make money doing it, great. And if you actually think you can and you're willing to make a bet, I'll bet with you. One, because I want to see you try, and two, because it's much harder than it seems. Because I was cocky enough to think I was going to do it, and then I tried, and I didn't.
We'll put a notification out in the server later, see if anyone wants to take up that bet. No, but for real, that's a really fascinating answer. Appreciate you sharing that. We're gonna go with the final question. All right. So, what does the future hold for Beni? What's the end goal here? What do we? What is this trading thing to you? What is crypto to you? Is it a lifelong passion? Is it a get in, make your money, get out, retired to a beach in the Caribbean? What's the end goal for you, and what does the future hold, do you think?
Well, the goal was always, ever since day one, when I started making money, the goal was always to take care of the three women in my life. So my mom, who took care of me when I was sick in the hospital, and sacrificed basically her whole life to be my nurse for 13 years. And my sister, who unfortunately was born with a great disability that kind of limits her in most of daily life, and needs to be accompanied by somebody by her side so that she's able to live a normal life. And my girlfriend, who's been by my side for many years now, and was there when I had a lot of money, was there when I was broke, was there when I lost it all, and just was always my rock, and always was there for me. And my goal was always to essentially make sure I can get to a point where I can have enough money to live on the residual. Say I invest half into real estate, half into some bonds and stocks, and the whatever I make per year is enough to pay for, to make sure that my mom can have a great life, that my sister can have a great life, and that my girlfriend can have a great life. Today, where all those three are met, many things could get could be different. I think my the way I see risk will change quite drastically. I think I will withdraw the vast majority of my net worth from crypto, probably leaving only about 10%. Investing the rest in other assets, because I don't have that goal that many do of like, I want to reach X millions or 100 millions or whatever. I don't. I'm not a materialistic man, to be honest. I want something. I want a small house in the countryside, and likely that will suffice. I don't really want anything more. I think, speaking further than money, perhaps, and my trade and what I do, and I honestly love what I do. I have no regrets of stopping university to be doing what I'm doing. I would say, however, that it is very likely that in the next 5 years I don't have an edge anymore in this market. I think I can probably squeeze another full bull market, one bear market, but the next bull market, after that it's gonna be yeah, it's gonna bring in all the big boys, and I doubt I'm gonna have very much expertise at this point, unfortunately. Although I'll probably still trade it for fun and have some hold a lot of spots, which is what I'm always gonna do for crypto. I think that keeping my money in Bitcoin, and if privacy is still a thing, Monero, and holding that for the future for many years is sort of the goal. But crypto wise, that's kind of what I'm doing. It's likely that I will look into other markets after crypto. Like there's always something new, right? Like I'm looking into prediction markets. They're very interesting to me. Sort of how do you market like an event that could or could not happen? It's very interesting. There's so many things you can do, and especially if money is no object, like I don't care about how much money I'm making. I can just play the game even if I make $2 grand a month. It doesn't matter. So I can or $2 grand or $2 or whatever. It doesn't matter how much money I'm making. So it's that would be the end goal, I think. The goal where I can sort of soft retire and make a family with my girlfriend, take care of the people I love, and keep trading the things that interest me, or keep researching the things that interest me. I think maybe going back to academia. I don't know. Either way, like just doing something that I'm passionate about, and giving back to my family, and hopefully to the charities that helped me growing up, and yeah, just trying to be the guy that I wish I had when I was younger. I think that's kind of the goal for every man in this world.
What an amazing answer. And I think that just reinforces my points earlier about you being a genuinely good guy with a heart very much in the right place. So yeah, we're going to wrap it up on that very fitting note to end things on. Thanks a million, Beni, for coming out. It is always, and I'm not just saying this, it is always an absolute pleasure talking to you. I find you very, very insightful, informational, intelligent. Not only that, but you're extremely humble, and you're remarkably grounded for someone as evidently talented and knowledgeable as you are. Not a hint of overconfidence or cockiness, and I think it's an absolute pleasure to pick your mind like this. I'm sure our members got a lot out of that conversation. I know I did, and yeah, we're beyond lucky to have you on the team in Chroma, and to have you in the server willing to help us discretionary plebs out with all your quant brain. So thanks a million for joining us, and yeah. As I said, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you for over 2 hours now.
Yeah, thank you everybody. And I'm still gonna be on the computer, so if you guys have other questions, please just tag me in crypto chat or wherever, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Beni. Thank you to everyone who joined for this over 2 hour conversation. We had massive turnout, lots of interesting questions on this one. So yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Beni, again for joining. Guys, go follow Beni on Twitter. I'll post his Twitter, or should I say X, link in the chat right now. But yeah, go give him a follow. He's a really smart guy, shares some really interesting takes, and of course, we have the pleasure of having him in the server with his own channel as well, which is we're beyond lucky to have him. So yeah, thanks a million, Beni. Thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, have a great day. We'll catch you soon. Bye bye.
Much love, boys. Bye bye.